York. If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. Well, easier said than done. Home to the world's most renowned art schools, museums, and galleries, New York continues to lure creatives with a vision of artistic success. But what does it really take to make a name for yourself on such a competitive art scene? My name is Marzena Jarczak, and in the second season of Unseen, I'm traveling to New York to talk to curators, academics, and critics about their impact on the artists' careers. I will visit museums, galleries, artist studios, art residencies, and foundations to learn more about the diverse ways an artistic formation can take. And as always, I am taking you with me. In the art world, there is no one prescribed way to gain recognition, but developing one's unique artistic voice surely increases the chances of being heard. Adam Pendleton, whose works range from painting through sculpture to performance and installation, has been exhibited at some of New York's most prominent museums, such as the Whitney and MoMA. He develops his work through the idea of Black Dada, an evolving visual inquiry into the relationships between blackness, abstraction, and avant-garde. I'm meeting him at Pace Gallery on the occasion of his exhibition, An Abstraction. You came to New York at the age of 18 and had your first gallery show at the age of 21, which is extremely young. Yeah. Did you have any fixed idea of who you wanted to be as an artist at the time?
No, I did not necessarily have a fixed idea. I think being an artist is a perpetual process of discovery. So the more fixed your relationship is to the idea of what an artist is or what art can be, the less generative it is. I think you always have to be flexible and fluid in relationship to how you see yourself as an artist and also in relationship to the work that you make.
And in your latest exhibition, you present another chapter of your career-long preoccupations, such as the Black Dada or the abstraction. And could you tell me about the process of finding your own artistic voice?
Well, it's an ongoing process. I think that Black Dada was integral to it in the sense that it created a theoretical and conceptual and also visual space for myself as an artist. So Black Dada in many ways is a kind of operating position, and as a project in the way in which it manifests itself in the world through paintings and drawings, I think that's the physical manifestation of it. But for me, there's a kind of quiet, poetic dimension that really takes place in the studio outside of anyone's stare or glance. You know, I haven't done a show in New York in 10 years, and I think there's something still very special about showing here for me.
Sentimental special?
I think there's a little bit of sentimentality mixed in, but I think it's also because I'm surrounded by a community of artists that I respect, curators that I respect, so it has a particular kind of importance to me.
And is it important for you to be part of that community on a daily basis? Do you need interactions with other artists or, as you said, curators?
I mean, it's important for me to be a part of a community or communities, plural.
But also in what way to have this daily exchange of thought, of conversations?
I think that's an aspect of it. I think for me, it's really about looking. I spend a lot of time looking at art in New York, going to galleries, going to museums. I think as much as it's important to be a part of a community, it's also important to create a community or communities.
And you said that even though the Black Dada sets a frame to your work, it is a very expansive space of ongoing exploration, also self-exploration. Why is it important for you not to put a very strict, closed definition of who you are as an artist or what your art is?
Well, words change meaning over time, right? Our perspective on different historical moments changes meaning over time. So, of course, the meaning of a concept or an idea like Black Dada should change over time as well. Things change.
Being an artist is not only about your creative process and being part of a community or creating one, or not even about the exhibitions only, but also it means being a part of a market that has very specific demands and trends, and also where there's a lot of competition. How do you navigate yourself in a space that comes with so many challenges?
I ignore most of it.
Is it something that came naturally or something that you have had to learn?
It's something you observe over time that allows you to realize, or allowed me to realize, that ignoring most of it was the most productive and effective thing to do, because again, things change. So, you know, I've been showing my work now for, I think, almost 20 plus years, and you see, you know, trends and, you know, artists of the moment, artists of the month, artists of the week. Things come and go, things change, and it's abundantly clear that the most important thing to do is to make good work and continue to define and develop your voice as an artist. I have to be a good student of my own work, you know? And that's a lot of deep looking and deep thinking.
A lot of discipline.
A lot of discipline, yeah. And a lot of commitment in the space of the studio, going to the studio. Practice, right? I think to be a good painter, you have to practice. You have to practice.
You have to have the technical skills.
You have to have technical skills, and I don't mean necessarily to, you know, perfectly replicate, you know, someone's face or an apple or a shadow, but technical skill is actually very particular to the individual. So really honing in on what you want to do with the medium, with the potential of painting, with the potential of color, shape, form, shadow, light, material.
And what are the measures of artistic success for you?
The ability to continue to make art. It's probably the most important thing for me.
As artists continue to make art, the art world continues to change. Deborah Kass arrived at the New York scene in the 1970s and has made a name for herself with painterly feminist interventions in the history of art. Her works, spanning across media, are held in the collections of museums such as the Guggenheim, the Met, or the Brooklyn Museum. I'm meeting her at her Brooklyn studio to talk about challenges that come with keeping your artistic integrity intact on the ever-evolving market. Your career spans 5 decades, and the art world has changed radically over that period. Do you think that the role of an artist or the expectations towards the artist have changed also?
First thing to say on that subject is the fact that the art world has changed itself.
In what ways?
When I came, it was just a sort of small community to a market.
And that was in the 70s?
And that was in the 70s. Yeah, I was on the Whitney program in '72. The difference between it being sort of a marginal community that was full of ideas and excitement, nobody really cared that much, to an unregulated market, that's huge. And in terms of expectations of artists, although I think the marketing is still based on the idea of sort of this individual genius, the reality is now that the expectations are a level of professionalism that certainly did not exist in the 70s. And that level involves your studio manager, your social media person, your assistants in making the work, and like running it like a small to mid-sized business. We were coming out of the 70s when it was a great time for women. A particularly great time.
What does
I would
it mean?
say the last great time, because that was the decade women had political power, because that was second wave feminism. Because it was the height of second wave feminism, when people were talking about art, they wanted to know what women were doing, and women were showing. And that was the generation that included Faith Ringgold, Pat Steer, Elizabeth Murray, Mary Holman, Howardina Pindell, Joan Snyder. women were incredibly well represented in galleries, the few galleries there were, because women were what people were talking about. What happened in the 80s was this one group of white men after another. First there was Neo-Expressionism, then there was Neo-Geo, and it was always all men and all white, always. And that's when things really changed. This was the beginning of this art market, and that had a whole different value system and a disposability that those women actually avoided because they happened before this thing that we call the art market happened, that they were the last thing to happen. And I tell my ex-students from Yale who are now cajillionaires, I say, take the money and run, it's not forever. Because they're part of the market. Some will survive, but they are part of the market. Because there isn't an alternative now, you know?
So what are the biggest challenges artists have to face nowadays?
If you're young and successful, the biggest challenge is going to be market cycles. And I don't know how much control one has over that. None, I would say. Commodification, that's the same thing. Over-professionalism. But in terms of work, my big thing, cliches. I would say avoid cliches for everybody. That would be my blanket statement. Work hard, avoid cliches.
So do you think that those two qualities are enough to be able to, okay.
You need a lot of luck. You need to be at the right place at the right time. You need to be in the right body at the right time, because that's what people want, whatever that body is at the moment.
And do you believe in the idea of having a talent, or is
I
working...
totally believe in talent.
Okay.
Rest assured, I believe in talent, because I think everybody who becomes an artist was the little kid who drew all the time. Mm-hmm. Even if you end up a photographer, you know, I just think that, I think being an artist is absolutely part of being a human. I mean, I think as long as there's humanity, there are artists. Mm-hmm. It's not enough, but it's where you start.
Mm-hmm. And then what do you have to add to the talent?
You know, obviously you need to be smart. Artists are really smart people. Successful artists are really brilliant people. You have to be really smart, you have to work really hard. The other challenges would be for people who are less successful, which is self-doubt. Financial challenges are enormous. Unless you're a rich kid, you're going to have financial challenges. The self-doubt and the sense of humiliation are really, you know, they're going to be there. You're going to face it. You're going to face it every day. When someone you went to grad school with is suddenly, you know, selling for $3 million at auction and you're like working for Deb Cass as a part-time assistant.
Did you feel self-doubt often?
Totally.
Do you remember the moment you realized you knew how to transform what you wanted to express into work?
I was dealing with pieces of art history and pieces of art historical styles. And at one point I made a few paintings. One was called Table of Contents. I made number 1 and number 2, and then I made short story number 1 and number 2. And I might have made a couple versions of each of them. And I literally made individual canvases that all stuck together of my interests and my lexicon and my vocabulary and my influences. And it was like an index of everything I'd ever thought about. Not everything, but it basically pointed to everything I was thinking about.
And did you immediately know that painting would be your main mean of expression?
Oh, I always painted. I mean, that was from day one. So that was always going to be how I did whatever I was going to do. When I had put all this whole vocabulary, just laid it out in ultimately 16 panels, one side and another side, I realized I had a vocabulary. And at that point, literally, I went, now what do I want to say? My intellectual and emotional exchange is really with the times, the news, politics.
And what is the purpose of making art for you?
I don't know. It's just something you have to do when you have to do it. There's no, I mean, I think my art has a purpose. I don't know my purpose in making it, other than I've been compelled to express myself in a visual language, and painting of all things. But I think there's that. So I guess that's the answer. Is that the answer?
It is the answer, but now I'm curious about what is the purpose of your art then?
Well, my work has been really a sort of feminist intervention into the history of art. I mean, it's been very straightforward. You know, it's like, what would this all look like if I'd done it? Or what would it look, or how do I see it differently than it's being presented? You know, how does this not represent me, and how can I use it to represent me? And that's kind of been what I've done.
Decades of fulfilling career are what every artist could wish for. How can a traditional academic education contribute to fulfilling that dream? What are the alternative learning opportunities artists can benefit from? Follow our next episode to learn how different forms of education can empower artistic growth.